Hello everybody, welcome to On The Whistle, brought to you by the Sunderland Echo. My name's James Copley and I'm standing in for Phil Smith today. Phil's done a lot of hard miles over the last couple of weeks to Millwall and the like, so he's sitting this one out. And you've got me, but he should be back for the Sheffield United game on New Year's Day. Obviously, I'm coming to you all after Sunderland lost at Stoke City at the Bet365 Stadium. I was down there, 92nd minute winner by Leicester City loanee and ex-Sunderland target Tom Cannon, which was very, very unfortunate. I thought Sunderland were good value for a point, to be brutally honest. I thought on another day they could have missed it. There was the Chris Mepham penalty shout, which I think is a blatant penalty from Berger. And, Sunderland came up against Victor Johansson in Stoke City's goal, who I think is probably the best goalkeeper in the Championship, or certainly in the conversation. I thought he pulled off a couple of tremendous saves. Sunderland hit the post twice in the game, and had it not been for Johansson, I think they could have and should have scored in the game. Obviously, Eliza Mayenda had that chance that he had to score, obviously 4 yards out. That's 2 in 2 games, one against Blackburn Rovers now, where he really should have put us in the lead, and it's hugely unfortunate for him. But yeah, I thought Sunderland were well worth the point, and possibly on another day should have won the game. I think what you do have to say as well is that Stoke did have chances. Anthony Patterson did pull off a couple of good saves, especially in the first half as well. So yeah, let's get into it, and let's get into some of your questions, which are going to come from Blue Sky initially. Ross Robson says, should the club stick or twist in January? Ross says, if we stick, we have to wait for the injured players to come back and hope they stay fit. Twist, if we do that, we bloat the squad with a few short-term additions to fill some of the gaps in the team squad. I think this is a really, really interesting question. Obviously, Sunderland do have a lot of players to come back from injury. Chris Rigg needs to come back from injury. Alan Brown will come back from injury. You hope Romain Mundle and Tommy Watson will come back from injury. Sam Ed, are we going to see him at some point? You'd think that if he can get a run of games going, then that would be crucial to the second half of Sunderland's season. But there's no sign of him yet, so you can't hang your hat on him. Paveda continues to be in and out the squad. So I feel, despite the fact that I quite like Wilson Isidore, obviously he's on 6 goals for the season. He went 7 without a goal. I do think Sunderland need additions up front. I think we need to score goals. I think that's what gets you out of the Championship. It's what gets you out of any division across football, no matter if you're going for promotion. Even if you fight relegation, goals will save you. Your clean sheets are important, obviously. Defence is important, but goals win football games. And I like Wilson. He's done a decent job so far, barring that sort of barren run. But you just feel like the top teams in the division, I think, Sunderland non-executive director Dave Jones made the point, didn't he, on a podcast recently, that Ipswich Town had 3 or 4, 5 attacking options. They could all score goals, and it helped fire them to the Premier League, and they were winning a lot of games late on. Now Sunderland are dropping points late on, and I think that's telling. Obviously Mayenda can play up front, but for me, he does look very raw. He's 19 years old. I don't think we should crucify him for his 2 misses against Blackburn and Stoke City, but he does have to be doing better from those positions. Does he need a little bit of time at the firing line? Yes, I think so. Sunderland brought in Aaron Connolly over the summer, but he hasn't really done too much as goal against Millwall aside. So I think Sunderland need a couple of really, really high quality additions up front. Perhaps Premier League loanees. We know that they've tried for another loanee from a Premier League club in the summer, but that sort of fell through. So I think this is a really interesting January for Sunderland. I don't expect a lot of business. I don't think you can rule out Sunderland maybe pulling the trigger on a Romain Mundle or a player of that ilk for the future. I think that's something they will definitely look to do if something comes available. But I would like to see them get some high quality loans, maybe even in a permanent addition as well. And the blueprint I would use for that would be the Chris Mepham transfer in the summer. Sunderland pulled the trigger on that, and they got in a high quality player on a season's loan, who can contribute immediately. I don't think we can sign a lot of players in January who are going to take a while to get up to speed, because there are gaps in the squad, I think, that need filling, and I just think you do need that extra firepower. I think 1 or 2 quality additions with the likes of Alan Brown and Mundle and Chris Rigg, Tommy Watson to come back, I think could really aid Sunderland's promotion push. Let's have a look what we've got here. Do we need to buy some more robust players? Chris says on Blue Sky. I think this is a really interesting question. Obviously, Sunderland in the summer they went and got Sam Ed, didn't they? And he hasn't kicked a football for Sunderland yet. Obviously, he's been injured. He had a setback when he joined the club. That's really, really unfortunate. But there's a little bit of a theme, isn't there? Because Poveda has been in and out. He's been injured. He dropped out of the squad again against Stoke City. And there's Abdullahi as well, who signed for Sunderland injured, who hasn't played yet. So, yeah, I think we do need robust players to come into Sunderland. I do feel like Sunderland have been a little bit unfortunate with the injuries that they have suffered. I know the medical team can sort of be questioned on social media, but a lot of these injuries, barring really Romain Mundles, which was a muscle injury, have been sort of impact injuries in games. You think of, Alan Brown breaking his leg. You think of Chris Riggs' recent injury was an impact injury. Tommy Watson's injury was an impact injury. He took a shot and it was blocked, and obviously that's harmed his ankle and his leg. So yeah, I think you always want to get robust players into the football club, and I would sort of point towards Chris Mepham in that as well, because he seems very, very robust. He seems sort of familiar with the patterns of first team football and the rigours of it. Obviously, he's been promoted before from the Championship. He's played in the Premier League. So he could sort of withstand, multiple games. But the point to make is that the games do come thick and fast. They've come thick and fast over Christmas. They're only going to get faster as we head into the new year. And you do need players to stand up to the physical challenge. Let's have a look here. What else do we have? German Black Cats asked, are any of our strikers on the level to play for promotion? Should Lebris bring on Ogunsuyi instead of, and again, poor Aaron Connolly? There was a couple of questions on Aaron Connolly and of this ilk. It's difficult, isn't it? Because he was brought on towards the end of the game. He didn't really have too much of a chance to make an impact. I do feel a bit for Aaron Connolly in a sense that he started against Millwall, didn't he? And he scored that goal. And then he's sort of been in and out, left on the bench by Lebris a couple of times. And Lebris sort of hinted that he needed to do it a bit better in training, essentially, and maintain his levels. But he's never really had that run, isn't it? And I think that's what us as fans and pundits and whatnot could really underestimate, is the power of a run in the side. Now, Connolly hasn't played 5-10 games in a row, so I find it's really hard to judge him. It's a strange one in the fact that Lebris has sort of started to trust him less as the season's gone on. I'm not sure what's happening there or what his levels are like in training, but in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, getting promoted, you do need quality and you do need goals. And Aaron Connolly, I would suggest at the moment, possibly isn't bringing that. I think the Trey Ogunsuyi question is a really, really interesting point that German Black Cats makes on Blue Sky, because Liverpool are absolutely interested in signing Trey Ogunsuyi, who is having a fantastic season for the under-21s and under-18s. I don't have the figures off the top of my head, but his goal contributions are absolutely fantastic. So Sunderland want to keep him, and that's why you're seeing him involved in the first team squad, because Sunderland want to keep hold of him, and obviously because his performances merit that. I think he could be the next big thing in Sunderland in terms of the next Chris Rigg, the next Tommy Watson. I don't want to put too much pressure on him, obviously, but I think he could be the next sort of star that breaks through and has an impact on the first team if he stays fit. I think he's a huge talent, and I think depending on where Sunderland are come the end of the season, I think you could see him get his first minutes of the campaign and of his senior career at some point, similarly to I think towards Watson, maybe towards the back end of last season. I know he made his debut against Huddersfield Town quite a long time ago, but there was a couple of games towards the back end of last season, wasn't there, under Mike Dodds, where Tommy Watson was brought on late. I think that that Ogunsuyi could be in line for something similar towards the end of the season, but that would also depend, of course, on whether Sunderland are fighting for automatic promotion or whether they are still in the mix with the playoffs. It is a big risk to bring a young player in like that. I can't see him starting anytime soon for obvious reasons, unless there's a worsening of Sunderland's injury crisis. But he's certainly one to watch and a quite brilliant player. Obviously, he actually signed a new contract fairly recently. I think it might have been last summer. So yeah, let's move on to the next question. Tom says Mepham has been quite hit and miss the last few games, at fault in the last game when he gave the ball up as it was going out and the Blackburn attacker didn't. And he crossed it. Today, very poor attempt at a tackle leading to Stoke's goal together with O'Nien, who defended poorly. I mean, I have to agree. I think Chris Mepham has been obviously a really net positive for Sunderland. He's been a brilliant Rolls Royce of a defender. His positional awareness is fantastic. His leadership skills, when you speak to him, he's very, very balanced. He's got that experience, as I mentioned earlier, of getting promoted. He's a £12 million footballer. Bournemouth player paid £12 million for him. So he is a good footballer. I do think his form has slightly dipped, as has Sunderland's in the past couple of games. He didn't look as assured as he usually does against Blackburn Rovers, who in fairness are an extremely good side. And sort of coming into the Stoke City game, I was of the opinion that the opinion that Mepham and O'Nien were Sunderland's best centre-back pairing, really. But I just think with the disruptions that have happened over the past couple of weeks, obviously you had Ballard in and out before his injury, didn't you? You had O'Nien playing at full-back. With injuries and suspensions, I just feel like Sunderland have lost a little bit of continuity in that area. And I think for Stoke City's goal, it was poor, wasn't it? Let's not beat around the bush. Let's call a spade, as we did with Eliza Mayenda. He has to be scoring that. I think O'Nien has to be doing better there, and I think because he's obviously dispossessed and then fails to win the ball back. And I think Tom Cannon's got a lot of time. I don't think Chris Mepham's strong enough in that moment. But good players will make mistakes. It's about how they bounce back. I actually spoke to Chris Mepham after the game, and those quotes will sort of be on the Sunderland Echo website in the next couple of days. But he was very reflective, very sanguine, but also very positive for the future, and basically of the opinion that Sunderland have to put it right against Sheffield United. And in terms of Mepham and O'Nien in particular, he's made mistakes in the past, but he always manages to bounce back and turn in a good performance. It was a mistake in one moment, I thought, from O'Nien and Mepham. Mepham should have had a penalty awarded for him, and I thought him and O'Nien were fairly decent, other than the mistake for the goal. But obviously, the mistake for the goal is what people talk about, and rightly so as well. So I would back them to bounce back. As I say, I just think Sunderland have lost a little bit of continuity with their defence and the sort of players dropping in and out. I think that has harmed them, and perhaps a bit of fatigue as well, physically and mentally. There's been a lot of games played over the past couple of weeks. But yeah, I don't think you can argue against Mepham being a very good signing for Sunderland still, and I think he will be a key player, as will O'Nien. Both bring tremendous amounts of leadership. And yeah, let's move on to the next question. What have we got here? Question which sort of relates to Ross's earlier from Blue Sky says, will the club invest in promotion in January or accept playoffs at best? Again, I think this is a really interesting question, and thank you for that one. I think the club have to invest in January if they want to stay in the mix, to be brutally honest. Obviously, Sunderland are fourth at the moment. That top two positions just looking a little bit beyond Sunderland, I think, at the moment in terms of their squad composition. I think Sunderland could still get back there, absolutely, but you would need injuries to come back, injured players to come back, and I think Sunderland would need to invest, again, in one or two loanees. I don't think Sunderland should go down the whole City route last season in January, where they really did spend big, and I think that's hampered them since. Under Liam Rosenior, obviously, they then got rid of him. I don't want to see Sunderland sort of go reckless and blow the whole budget, but I think there is room to manoeuvre there in January, and I think the club have to move on a couple of deals if they're there to be done. This is a good Sunderland squad, and I always look back to the playoff season under Tony Mowbray. During that season, you had Ahmad, you had Ross Stewart, you had Ellis Sims for a little bit as well. Ross Stewart got injured. You had Jack Clark, you had Patrick Roberts, you had a really good centre-back partnership of Danny Bath and Dan Ballard. O'Nien was kicking around in there as well. You had Trey Hume and Dennis Sergan at various points. You had Patterson in goal. It was a very, very strong first Sunderland 11. I'm probably forgetting a few players as well. And the wider squad was okay, but it wasn't robust enough to go and get promotion. You saw against Luton Town and the playoffs didn't have a fit centre-back. At least he had to come on and then picked up an injury. Gelhardt signed in the January. He was signed to play off Ross Stewart. Ross Stewart got injured. That was a tough one to take. But had Sunderland sort of gone for it a little bit more in that January, was there an opportunity to go for it? Sunderland could have perhaps advanced to a playoff final, and then who knows what can happen. So I think the trick is always to sort of try and strengthen when you are strong. And Sunderland are in a really good position at the moment. They're an attractive place to go. They also have players like Joe Bellingham, Chris Rigg. Patrick Roberts is still there. Wilson Isadore's a good striker. Hume and Serkin are playing at a decent level, although I thought both were a little bit under par. You've got O'Nien and Mepham, who are a great centre-back partnership. Behind them, you have Elise and Dan Ballard. Dan Neil is playing at a good level at number 6 now. Sometimes you have to take the chance when it's given to you, when you have these players at your disposal, because we don't know how long Chris Rigg and Joe Bellingham are going to be at Sunderland. I think that's just the harsh reality of the situation. We need to enjoy them while we've got them. There's going to be interest. I don't think they'll go anywhere in January, obviously. But the summer, all bets could be off, especially if Sunderland don't get promoted. And you could look at a scenario in 2 or 3 years' time, potentially with Sunderland still in the Championship, and you look at that team and you think, how on earth did that not get promoted? All it needed was a little bit of this or a little bit of that. And that's sort of how I feel about that Mowbray team. How did that team not get promoted? Because it's very good. And the reason is because the squad wasn't robust enough. And looking back on that January pretty harshly, was enough done? Probably not. So that's sort of my view on that. And I think the club seem to have a sort of a little bit more belief in Lebris. I don't think that's being harsh on Tony Mowbray. I thought Tony Mowbray was a fantastic manager for Sunderland, but there seems to be a little bit more alignment between the board and Lebris, and I do think they'll back him should the right deals come around, and I do think now is the time to back Lebris. I think they've got to really attack promotion. Sunderland have done exceptionally well to be in this position, and it would be such a shame with this group, with this squad of players, if they didn't kick on.